right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. It being 6 o'clock on Thursday, November 12th, 2020, we will begin the meeting for the Committee of Ways and Means. All votes will be by roll call, and if you would like to speak, councilors, please use the raise hand function. If anyone from the public has questions or comments, you can reach out to us by the town council email, towncouncil@braintreema.gov. Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Council Barrica.
Here.
Council Ryan.
Here.
Council Connors is not presently here. Councilor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilor Shasha.
Here.
All set. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. Okay, we have 5 sets of minutes to approve this evening. If nobody objects on the council, I would recommend that we do one roll call for all 5 approvals.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we need a second for that, Sue?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 29th, 2020, July 28th, 2020, September 2nd, 2020, September 14th, 2020, and September 22nd, 2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Council Barrica.
Yes.
Council Ryan.
Aye.
Council Connors not here. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Sasha.
Yes.
That's 4 in favor.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. Okay, we have no old business this evening. We're going to take the new business slightly out of order tonight. And I would like to start with 20070, Mayor appointment William J. Grove to the Planning Board, or take up any action relative thereto. Is there anyone from the Mayor's office who would like to speak on this?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As the board might recall, earlier this year, the mayor appointed Bill Grove to serve as an alternate member of the Planning Board. For those of you that have attended meetings, I think you'll agree that Mr. Grove has taken a very active role in the Planning Board meetings and has made some great contributions to the discussions that the board has had so far. As some of you also may have heard, Bob Harnez has recently resigned from the Planning Board and has been appointed to serve as a judge by Governor Baker, which is really exciting. So a great loss for the Planning Board and the town as a whole, but also a great opportunity for Bob. We were definitely sad to see him go. With his departure, the mayor felt it was appropriate to elevate Mr. Grove to member status on the Planning Board and is seeking your approval for that this evening.
Thank you, Solicitor Taub. Do any councilors have questions for the mayor's office on this? Okay, seeing none. I have one sort of process question, Nicole. Sure. Will there be a second alternate appointed in the future to take Mr. Grove's place?
Yes, I expect that you'll see another referral in short time for the replacement alternate.
Thank you. Councilor Shasha.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I did just want to make a comment on this, not a question, but I have watched most of the Planning Board meetings, and Mr. Grove has done a fantastic job. I know it's been a sore point of mine for a long time that the Planning Board did not review issues that were being sent to the ZBA. And I know that was one of the first things he questioned, and we're doing that now. I think he's been a great asset to that board, and I enthusiastically support him becoming a member. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shasha. Any other councilors have questions on this appointment? Okay, in that case, is there a motion?
Motion to recommend favorable action to the full council.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Council Barrica.
Yes.
Council Ryan.
Aye.
Council Connors presently not here. Council Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Sasha.
Yes.
That's 4 in favor.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Clerk Semino. Sue, do we want to keep going down and hold off on 20071?
Yes, please.
Okay. So next we'll take up 20072, Mayor request for appropriation, Smelt Brook Culvert and Fisheries Habitat Restoration, or take up any action relative thereto. Would someone from the mayor's office like to speak on this?
Certainly, I'm happy to provide kind of a general overview and then turn it over to Director Christine Stickney and Conservation Planner Kelly Phelan. As the board might remember, we previously approved funds back in October for phase 1 of the Smelt Brook Culvert and Fisheries Habitat Restoration Project. The funds seeking approval here are to support a park, that will be located within the landing and easily accessible by residents of both Braintree and Weymouth. And so with that, I will turn it over to Christine or Kelly if they have any of the details, if there's any questions that the committee may have.
Director Stickney?
Thank you. Is it possible I can share my screen so I can put up the site plan?
That would be great. Sue, are you able to do that? Thank you.
Are you guys able to see that?
No.
Okay, let's share screen. This one. Is it visible now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
It looks great. Yep.
So this is primarily, as everybody knows, we've been working in the landing for years, trying to do a couple of things down there. This plan, if you look to your left, is Commercial Street. To your right is the back parking lot that is behind Landing 53 that's used during the day for public parking. And so what you see is the daylighted version of the Smelt Brook, where it runs from the edge of the back of the sidewalk over to that parking lot. And then next to it, you'll see there's some walking paths that have some bump outs that are in the circles for plantings. They'll also have kiosks that describe some of the habitat and what they're looking at at the daylighting. They'll also have a little bit of historical background. We're going to have some benches, granite benches, and some more landscaping on both sides of it. So I think it's approximately the whole area with the daylighting is about 6,000 square feet. But the focal point is the actual culvert that's daylighted. That's over 150 feet. And so I think it's going to be a nice little pocket park for this end of the landing. It's actually the center line is actually in the culvert going the brook. So it's partially in Braintree, but partially in Weymouth as well. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Stickney. Do any members of the council have questions? Councillor Flaherty?
I'm curious, this is some in Weymouth and some in Braintree, but it looks like, is Braintree funding the whole project?
No, they actually, both towns worked together on a MassWorks grant, which incorporated some of the subsurface work that was phase 1, and then some of the above surface, which would be this park for phase 2. And then they're also funding part of this as well. But our portion was for the $150,000 for the park.
Any other counselors have questions? Okay, sorry, thank you guys. I'm trying to scroll through all the names. Director Stickney, I'm looking through the paperwork, so forgive me if this is in the packet, and thank you, because all my questions were basically answered, and I just can't remember if this is in here. When is this little park supposed to get underway or start construction?
Well, they were hoping to do it this fall. You know, we're already into mid-November. So I anticipate if we have a very mild winter, they might do some of what we call the hardscape, you know, the benches, the walkways. Obviously, any plantings would have to be late March, early April in that time range.
Okay, that's great.
We're behind schedule for what they want to do.
Well, I went and drove down to look at the brook this weekend, and I think this is going to be a fantastic addition to the landing and this area in general, and give people a nice opportunity to enjoy all the work that's been done on the brook as well. So I am excited about this project. Thank you. Any other counselors have questions? Counselor Flaherty.
Is there a plan? Are there? It's hard for me to see on the screen that you're showing me, but I'm curious to know if there's a plan to make this accessible for wheelchairs.
If I may, through the chairwoman, yes, of course. All new construction now has to be ADA acceptable. As to how they get to the brook, I don't know that details in there. This is what we call 90% plans. I will double check with Beta and Weymouth to make sure that there's some point that they can get up close to the brook and see how they're going to view it. But everything else is supposed to be ADA accessible.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other counselors? Okay, seeing none. Can we have a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. 20072, Mayor, request for appropriation, Smellbrook Culvert and Fisheries Habitat restoration or take up any action related thereto. So the motion is that in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 44B of the general laws and with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, the appropriation of $150,000 from the CPA Open Space Fund for the Smellbrook Culvert and Fisheries Habitat Restoration Project Phase 2, proposed mutual park in the landing located between number 1 Commercial Street, Braintree, in the former Old Mill Grill, number 4 Commercial Street, Weymouth, at the corporate town line with Weymouth, conditional on the funds expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee and the Director of Planning and Community Development. So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Council Barica,
Yes.
Council Ryan,
Aye.
Council Connors is presently not here. Council Flaherty,
Yes.
Council Sasha.
Yes.
That's 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent.
Thank you. All right, we will now move on to 20073. Excuse me, Mayor request for appropriation, Middle Street, Manatequit River Trail, application or take up any action relative thereto. There will be a public hearing for this motion coming up at the full council on November 17th. Is there anyone from the mayor's office who would like to speak on this matter?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So these funds would be used to support a proposed trail that's approximately 1/3 of a mile in length that also will be fully ADA compliant through the Middle Street open space property, allowing for public view and experience of the Manatequit River and surrounding area.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for the extensive packet of information that you sent along. It was extremely helpful. Are there any counselors who have questions? No questions? Okay. Again, just for public, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Counselor Ryan.
Thank you. So I just, we just voted to use CPA money for the park down at Weymouth Landing. Now we're going to vote for a walkway, a river trail, so you can enjoy the Manatequit River. This is exactly what we should be using. One of the reasons we should be using CPA money. So I fully support this. I want to thank the mayor's office and I want to thank the staff that have worked on this, Christine and Kelly, thank you very much. And Nicole works on everything. So thank you too, Nicole.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan.
Well said. All right, and I was just going to add for the public, either in attendance or watching at home or on a recording, you can find all of the documents that the counselors receive to get any of the details that you want and need about any of these projects. So they're all accessible and on the town website for your review. Okay. Seeing no other counselors, is there a motion for 20073, request for appropriation, Middle Street, Manatequit River Trail?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. The motion that in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 44B of the general laws and with the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, the appropriation of $150,000 from the CPA Open Space Fund and $150,000 from the CPA Unreserved Fund for the Middle Street, Manatequit River Trail project proposed for the Middle Street open space parcel located off Middle Street, assesses map 2002 plot 1 and map 2006 plot 1A, conditional on the funds expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee and the Director of Planning and Community Development. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Councilor Baraka,
Yes.
Councilor Ryan,
Aye.
Councilor Connors is not present. Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Sasha.
Yes.
That's 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent.
Thank you very much, Clerk Semino. Okay, moving right along, we are going to move on to 20074, Mayor, request for appropriation. Nope, sorry, I think, oh no, that's right. Manatequit River Trail at Armstrong Dam, or take up any action relative thereto. And there will be a public hearing on this matter as well at the full council meeting. So I will open it up to the mayor's office to provide any information they'd like.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is part of a larger project that previously received an appropriation in October. The walking trail being supported by this appropriation will include, excuse me, provide the opportunity to access the Scenic Rock Falls area and also view the annual river herring migration. The trail, also a 1/3 of a mile in length, that will go around the property and will be universally accessible and also fully ADA compliant. I would like to make one note. We are asking that the committee make a slight adjustment to the motion on this appropriation, as the funds are actually intended to come from the CPA Unreserved Fund and not the Open Space Fund.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there any counselors who have questions on this? Counselor Ryan.
So I'll just hit replay on the message I just delivered. It's a great project. You know, going to have a trail that will take you under the railroad bridge so you can see the natural rock formation under the bridge. It's just a beautiful spot in Braintree that you wouldn't even think you were in Braintree. It's so nice. Not that other parts of Braintree are nice, but it's so nice at the bridge, and seeing the underside of the bridge and how beautiful it is with the rock formation. It's very nice. This is going to be a great project and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ryan. Counselor Sasha.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I did just have one question, one comment. The question is, why are we using unrestricted CPA funds?
Because there wasn't a sufficient balance in the open space account.
Okay, thank you. And my comment is, I have heard some residents express concern farther upriver about the Adams Street project and flooding and undersized culverts and the flow of water through this riverway. I know there might be some concerns in this area about downstream impacts of the dam. And I'm wondering, I know we're talking about the walkway here, but I'm wondering in this whole project with the dam removal, do we have information that we can provide to residents at this point about kind of all the issues along this river and where water backs up and floods into the street, and where I heard one resident, Mr. Crispin, at Monday night's meeting talk about the lack of flow of water in this area. And I'm just curious how this all comes together and if we have a complete picture at this point of all the issues along this river.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, I know we've fielded some similar questions to that effect. So I, with your permission, would ask Christine or Kelly to weigh in on that.
Certainly. Whoever would like to address Councillor Shasha's question, whether it's Ms. Phelan or Ms. Stickney.
I can start, and I will say that the river is one big system, and there's problems with flooding happen because the channel can only convey so much flow, and in a flood you have, like, for example, in the March 2010 storm, we had 9 inches of rain over a few days, which is far more rain than we would typically have in any other storm. And you can't really make the river wide enough and deep enough to convey that much water, so it floods, and ideally it floods in the floodplain where there's no development, and that's the purpose of the floodplain. But so much of Braintree was developed before there was regulation, so there's unfortunately neighborhoods in the floodplain, there's road crossings and other things that get impacted during a flood. So this project can't solve all of those things. It's actually not even really affecting any of those things. I sent Councillor Barrica today some information about this dam. It's not a flood control dam. It doesn't hold back water for that purpose. It doesn't hold back enough water to affect flooding. It was a mill dam. So we have a pretty good FAQ now after today, so we can post that on the website, but it kind of gets to some high level issues about floodplains and rivers and that are beyond this project.
Okay, I'm sure that would help. And yes, if it could be posted out there and we could share it with the residents that have concerns, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Any other councilors have questions for the mayor's office on this? Okay, I'm going to jump in and thank you. I am so grateful, Ms. Phelan. I know I sent you a raft, no pun intended, a raft of questions. It came to my attention that one of the neighborhoods in District 5 in particular had been severely impacted by some of the flooding. Like you said, they're in the floodplain. And I know there's a lot of heart for this project. And I think what would be helpful, if you can elaborate a little bit on, so intuitively, a dam holds back water, and I can sort of picture Hollingsworth Pond in my head. So once that dam comes out, can you talk a little bit about how, like, where does that water go? How is it controlled so that the level of the Manatequit River isn't substantially higher than where it is today, and that it won't impact downstream this particular project? We know there's other climate change and everything else that can impact flooding, but how this project won't change the floodplain downstream or the level of the river.
I guess the analogy we used in that description was that, if you have a glass full of water and you hold it under a tap, there's no more room in the glass for more water. It just keeps spilling out. And since the pond is full now, that's the same idea. Any extra water that comes in just goes out in any event. Unlike a flood control dam where you would drain the glass, drain the pond, so it's empty before a flood comes and then it fills up and holds back water. This dam just releases water. So it just doesn't provide flood storage. Is that is the pond going to go away, or is the pond going to stay once the dam comes down? The pond will go away. Yeah, it'd just be regular river channel through there, like it is upstream and downstream.
And this might be a physics question, and there's enough channel that all that volume of water that's in the pond is going to be contained appropriately in the river channel today? Yeah,
it will just flow freely through the river channel the way it does upstream and downstream.
Okay.
I mean, in a flood, things would flood again. If we get 9 inches of rain, things will flood again.
Right, but not as a result of this particular project. And then if you don't mind, the other question, and I know that these came last minute, so thank you for elaborating. I appreciate it. Can you talk about how the river, the maintenance of the river, the debris, and the vegetation overgrowth how that either impacts or doesn't impact the flow of the Manaquit River, and what we can, and why dredging isn't feasible. What's the purpose?
Well, dredging to hold, if you wanted to dredge to make the river wide enough and deep enough to hold all of the flood flow, I'd be like 3, 4, 5 times the width and depth of the river that it is now, which is not even really in the realm of what's possible. So the vegetation removal and debris removal that will be done, and that is done to a certain extent now, is really just for fish passage. You can't physically remove enough material and widen the river enough and make it deep enough to pass all of that water in the event of a 100-year storm. Okay,
but with this project, the Mass Department of Fisheries is going to be monitoring the river. Is that correct? To ensure it's clear for the fish?
Right.
Okay. Thank you for elaborating. I do, and I do recognize this isn't an official public hearing, but I do know there were concerned citizens from this neighborhood. So I want to provide them with an opportunity to speak and ask their questions. And if you would like to do that, you can raise your hand. And if you do not want to speak, there will be other opportunities to make your voice heard on this matter. So I'll just give that a minute for folks. Okay, so seeing no members of the public, I just want to reiterate this appropriation relates to the trail boardwalk. And again, for residents, you can find this information and the timeline and all of the details on this project on the town website, or reach out to your counselor and we can get it for you. With that, okay, I just wanted to make sure. I thought I saw a hand, but I think it was you, Charlie, just fixing your computer.
Unmuting. Unmuting for the motion for 20074, motion that in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 44B of the general laws and with the recommendation, the Community Preservation Committee, the appropriation of $300,000 from the CPA unreserved fund for the Manaquit River Trail at the Armstrong Dam located on the former Armstrong Cork site, assesses map 1031 and plots 1 and 5, conditional on the funds expended under the direction of the Community Preservation Committee and the Director of Planning and Community Development. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Councilor Berica?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Aye.
Councilor Connors is not present. Councilor Flaherty?
Yes.
Councilor Sasha?
Yes.
That's 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent.
Thank you, Clerk Semino.
Thank you very much on behalf of the department and the mayor's office.
Thank you, Director Stickney. We'll be looking forward to the updates as they come forward. I know we're a ways off from construction, but that'll be great.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, Sue, would you like to move on to 03720? Yes?
Yes, I don't have any other update right now.
Okay. All right, so moving on to 03720, which is Councilor Berica. Update on first quarter FY 2021 budget actual versus projection. And this was something that we had discussed when we approved the budget, and the Ways and Means Committee had asked for some quarterly updates from the mayor's office. So I will turn it over to the mayor's office, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Before I start, I want to recognize Ed Spellman is here with us this evening as well. So I'll ask Ed to jump in at any time he feels appropriate. What we have prepared for the committee this evening is kind of a high-level overview on where we stand with some of our larger revenue streams, as well as some updates on some individual departments and how they're doing so far. If the committee has any questions, we're happy to do our best to answer them. just understanding that perhaps we may not be able to address all of the questions this evening. And so we're certainly prepared to come back and provide further update as the committee deems appropriate. So I'll start with state aid. As everybody probably remembers, we essentially level funded our state aid based on our fiscal 20 funding. Given the uncertainty caused by COVID, we really were unsure how that was going to shake out or if we were going to see any reductions as a result of the pandemic. I'm happy to report this evening that we have in fact seen an increase as opposed to a reduction based on our estimated amount. That right now is looking like a surplus of about just under $43,000, $42,850, and that's based on the governor's recommendation. We did receive information just before this meeting started that the House recommendation for funding was actually $3,000 more than we had estimated, more than the governor's budget, and that the Senate was recommending about a $10,000 increase from the governor's budget. So there is in fact a potential that we'll see another $13,000, bringing us to about $46,000 in excess of what we had budgeted as far as the state aid is concerned. So that extra funding certainly will be helpful to bridge some of the gaps, which I'll talk about as we move forward in the presentation. When talking about meals tax, as everybody remembers, we reduced our estimate by 25% from our fiscal 20 earnings, and the total estimated budget amount was $936,000. So what we did is, based on prior year's revenues, we estimate by quarter how much we anticipate receiving. For the first quarter of 21, we estimated a receipt of $230,724. Our initial reports show us being just under at $198,630 for first quarter, or a little over 86% of what we had estimated Q1 coming in at. One note I want to make both about the meals tax and about the rooms tax is there was an opportunity for these establishments to effectively defer payment, pushing the due dates out from March for the rooms tax, pushing them out currently to May of 2021. So we've been trying to get a sense from the state of how many establishments here in Braintree opted to take advantage of the deferred payment. And we have not been able to secure that information, but what it does tell us is that there may be some additional revenue generated in the first quarter that we're not actually going to see until later in the fiscal year. So for rooms tax, we budgeted a reduction of 50% from fiscal year 20's values, and that was budgeted at $832,500. So similar to the meals tax, we estimate what we are anticipating for each quarter, and for first quarter, we were estimating $205,211. This revenue came in actually pretty close at 93.9%, or $192,729. Those establishments also, as I mentioned, have the opportunity to defer payment to May of 21. So there may be additional revenue coming in from this time period that we're not going to see until much later in the fiscal year. We took a look at licenses and permit fees. We are estimating a yearly total of $2,053,000 on these. And to date, as of a couple of weeks ago, the building department permit fees, which includes building, plumbing, gas, electric, COCIs, and signs received through September 30, 2020, so just the first quarter, was $309,799.50. So that is a reduction from first quarter in both 19 and 20. But I anticipate there are some additional projects in the pipeline that are going to help support the permit fees revenue portion of our budget. To talk a little bit about the pandemic and the CARES Act and FEMA reimbursements. So FEMA reimburses the town for actual costs incurred to perform COVID-19 emergency response measures. So those are very concrete expenditures like first responder overtime, the purchasing of PPEs, and also the purchasing of disinfectant and cleaning supplies. Those get reimbursed to the town for a total of 75% of the cost incurred. And there is no cap on the amount of money that we're eligible to receive. We have submitted 2 applications for FEMA reimbursement, and that is overseen by Lorraine C., who I know she's not here, but have to say has just done a phenomenal job organizing and submitting our expenditures for reimbursement. Our first submission was for $99,552.65. So the reimbursable share was $74,664.49. We then submitted a second FEMA application for $121,358.07 with a federal share of $91,018.55. So anything that's either not eligible for FEMA reimbursement or that remaining 25% that's not eligible has been submitted for CARES Act reimbursement. So the CARES Act categories of eligibility are much broader than the FEMA reimbursements and also cover both incurred and estimated eligible expenses relating to the pandemic. So these include things like the Zoom software license that we're using here, any first responder or employee overtime that's incurred as a result of the pandemic, the additional nurses used for purposes of contact tracing. So those are just some of the examples that are eligible, and it gets submitted in a workbook to the state for review. So as a result of the first submission, we received $69,746, and that was for expenses incurred at the time as of the date of the first submission. For the second application, which was submitted on October 30th, we were encouraged to submit not just actual incurred expenses, but also projected expenses, taking us through December 30, 2020, which is the time period currently in effect for reimbursement eligibility. So what we did was we took a look at the costs incurred to date and used that data to project our expenditures through the end of the year. But we also then took the some of the additional items like the first responder overtime and estimated those additional costs, taking us to year end. So the actual costs that we submitted for reimbursement were $1,233,071, and the projected costs that we submitted were $2,343,657. That left us with a balance of available funds of a little over $800,000. We were encouraged to spend the balance, so we submitted for the full value of our eligible reimbursement remaining, which was $3,284,247. So we have not received a response yet, nor have we received any funding from the second application, but I expect we're likely to see the full value of that reimbursement before the end of the year, thanks to the work not just of Lorraine, but all of our department heads for working with her and submitting the expenditures. Lorraine has also been working on a large number of grant opportunities and seeking out grants that both are and are not COVID related. So I thought I also would highlight some of the COVID related grants that we've received so far to supplement the operating budget. An elections grant was awarded for $13,465. The fire department received a COVID related grant for $33,840. Police received a COVID grant for $17,788.56. We received a remote learning grant of $147,000, a food security infrastructure grant for $42,614.82. And then we've also been recently awarded a block grant for $320,000, which is going to offer small business assistance to local businesses meeting the criteria that will be spelled out in the publication. So those items, and then I believe we also have some additional funding coming from the state to support some of these operations, just waiting on the details of that from our representatives. So then a couple of updates from some of our departments. So police overtime, which is an item that is regularly before this committee, they have projected that their FY21 overtime at current trends is significantly lower than what it was in FY20. And so not factoring in any of the reimbursements that come through, they're averaging about $15,000 less per payroll in overtime over last year, and have spent $119,000 less in fiscal 21 than they did in fiscal 20 on overtime for the same period, which is certainly great news and representative of the work that they're doing at the police department to monitor and oversee overtime and the related expenditures. Then I know we've talked some about the golf course and the great work that they've been doing in spite of the 53-day closure resulting from the pandemic. So I wanted to share that as we sit here today, for the first quarter of fiscal 21, they made 57.12% of their overall budget for the year, which is significant. They are up. Their first quarter revenue has almost doubled from fiscal year 19, and also significant increase over fiscal year 20. Even better is when you add the revenue earned in October to the July through September earnings, they've earned a total of almost $1,348,830, or 69.19% of their total budget for the year. So they are certainly well on track for the year to see a surplus when we close out, and they're preparing now to set up the simulators and set up for winter season after a golf season that has been pretty unprecedented, and it's nice to use that in a good way. They have been fully booked. Every tee time that's been available has been taken. And I think we've seen a lot of new players at the golf course, which will lead to a lot of repeat participants, which I think is great for the long-term future of the course. So those are just kind of some of the, I know we have Allen Street and Billboard as separate items on the agenda. So I'm happy to address those now as part of this kind of overall presentation, or take any questions the committee might have on this information before moving on to those two items.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief of Staff Taub. I think maybe we'll see if any counselors have questions on this portion before we move on, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Counselor Shasha?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So Ms. Taub, a lot of that sounds, like you said, a little better than expected. Was there anything noticeable going on that is moving things in the other direction, that is not looking good for the town?
As far as revenue sources, I mean, now you kind of know what I know. I think when we get to the sale of Allen Street, we're going to keep moving in a positive direction. So I think that's also some good news for us. Ed and I have started looking at the individual department spending for the first quarter, and certainly may identify some concerns as that is ongoing. But at this point, and Ed, feel free to jump in, please. I think we're in fairly good shape, and I think we're in a little bit better shape than anybody. And I don't want to jinx us, but I think we're in fairly better shape than what folks anticipated. I also think we're going to end the year end fiscal 20 in a slightly better position than we had initially anticipated as well.
Okay, thank you. And one other question: how is Munis going?
Well, I'm going to leave that one to Ed. I know that they have been working hard on transferring the systems. I think it's been a little difficult because everything is being done remotely now on Zoom, all of the trainings and all of the updates that need to happen, which I think have created some unanticipated delays. So I think there's discussion about potential delay of implementation. But right now they're moving along. There's trainings multiple days a week. I have to be honest, I don't participate in those, but I know that we have representatives. Ed is on them, Karen Shanley from Human Resources, Barbara Walls, the treasurer, collector, as well as representatives from the school department that are in regular online meetings and trainings, working through the implementation and transition to Munis.
Okay, thank you. So are we talking about, this was going to be implemented in 2 phases, right? The first one, summer to fall, and then in January, it was going to be payroll. So are both pieces of that looking behind schedule at this point?
I'll ask Ed, but I think the answer is no, but I'll ask Ed to answer that officially.
We are implementing it in several phases. The first phase for the general ledger was supposed to be implemented on April 1st. And again, the plan originally was to have them on site for a 2-week period. That did not happen. It was delayed and we didn't go live for the general ledger till July 1st. And we are up and running with that. We're in the process of bringing over, closing out the books in SoftWrite, bringing those balances over to a Munis fiscal 20 and closing that out to roll the balances into fiscal year 21. Next component was going to be the payroll. And again, that was targeted for a go live date of January 1st. And again, all of the training and implementation work has been done remotely. And we're going to have a slight delay on that. We're working now with them and the departments to get all of the information into Munis right now. And we'll be running several parallel payrolls, first to be in the month of December, a couple in January, and potentially the 4th one in February with the go live of either March 1st or April 1st. So that has been delayed. In addition, the next phase will be implementing the utility billing, which would include the water, sewer, stormwater, and the trash. And that has been also delayed. And we're working with them now to implement to implement and bring in the historical information into Munis. And there's been some delay on their end in bringing the information in and getting it uploaded into the system. Then the 4th part is going to deal with the conversion of the collector's receivables, primarily real estate, personal property, motor vehicle excise. And that has been delayed also, again, due to the pandemic. And the plan would be that we're looking to start the training and implementation now. Instead of for a July 1 start date for all of it, we're looking to start the implementation with August 1 date for motor vehicle excise, with one of the smaller commitments, work through any issues, and from there move forward. The plan would be to go live with the real estate and personal property for the 3rd quarter of fiscal year 22, which would be 1/1/22 for the 3rd quarter, which would be the actual billing for that fiscal year. Right now, that's the plan and the time frame that we're looking at rolling out the system.
Okay, thank you. And what the current work that's being done now to move all the SoftWrite accounts over, when is that expected to be done? I guess the real question I'm asking is, when are we going to be able to start getting better data out of Munis than we were able to get out of SoftWrite?
We have the appropriations and that accounting information in the system now. We're in the process now of putting in the cash receipts for the months. I believe July is in. We're working on implementing the August. Again, with this system, we had all new chart of accounts and account numbers. We had to push that information out to the departments and have them make modifications to their turnover sheets. But I would hope within the next few months, we'll be able to get caught up on inputting the cash receipts and be able to provide you a revenue summary from the Munis system, similar to what we had provided to you in the past in an Excel format. And then for an appropriations report from Eunice, we'll be able to provide you something in a similar format to what you have in the budget book that was that you passed last year.
Okay.
Also, for fiscal 22, we'll be implementing the Munis into the Munis budget package for the budget, for the upcoming budget season.
Okay, so sometime early in the coming year, we should start being able to see some data out of there.
Yes.
Does that sound fair? Okay.
That's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Any other counselor have questions for the mayor's office? I have a question, Nicole. Can you repeat, was our total reimbursement from the CARES Act was about $3 million or a little north of $3 million?
So the total balance of funds still available was $3,284,247.
So balance funds available for us to withdraw from, or how does that work?
Right, so we were allotted a certain amount of funding. And so the first request yielded a reimbursement of $69,746.
Yeah.
So the available funds left in the pool for Braintree is that $3,284,247.
Okay.
One thing I didn't mention, the school department also got a separate allotment of funds, and that operated a little bit differently. I believe the schools were just given the amount and they were able to draw down from that. So that is not reflected in the report that I've given this evening.
Okay. Do you know, I know this is in Dr. Hackett's purview. Do you know what the schools got from the CARES Act?
I think it was 1.2. Ed, do you have the specific number handy?
I don't have the exact number, but it is the $1.2 million range. Yes.
That's fine. Yeah, we don't. I'm okay not getting down to the penny on that one. And then on the $320,000 block grant for small business assistance, how is that going to work? Do small businesses in town apply to the mayor's office for that? Do they need to, how is that going to?
So we've just recently been notified of the award. And so we're working through kind of what that process is going to look like. It's going to go for, it's specific for, I believe, rental assistance.
Okay.
And businesses have to have, I think it's 5 or less full-time employees in order to be eligible. And there's a maximum amount each business is eligible to receive. But Director Stickney is actually working on the parameters of that, and hopefully we'll be able to put something out soon.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you. I'll be looking forward to the details on that. Any other counselors before we move on to Allen Street and Billboard? Okay, so we don't need this has no motions, right? So we can just plow ahead.
Yes, correct.
All right. So then we will move on. Thank you very much, Chief of Staff Taub, for that. 03820, Councilor Baraka, update on Billboard or take up any action relative thereto. So just as a reminder to those in attendance or watching, we had factored the sale of a billboard into the town's general operating fund, and the mayor's office has agreed to give us an update on where that revenue stands. So I'll take it away.
I suppose if there was something that was not moving forward, it's not moving backwards, it's just not moving. So the case of the billboard is still pending before the land court. All the hearings have taken place, all the briefings and motions have been filed. And at this point, we are simply waiting for the court to issue its decision on the appeal with regards to the permit that was issued for the billboard at 290 Wood Road.
And that has been since June, hasn't it?
It sure has.
Okay. Anybody have questions on that? All right. Thank you, Chief of Staff Taub. If you can just keep us posted if we get word, that will be hopefully favorable for us.
Absolutely.
And hopefully they can get that wrapped up. Do we think they're going to get it wrapped up before the end of the year?
Certainly, we will continue to seek updates from the clerk's office at the land court, and perhaps impress upon them the importance for us to know one way or the other. But it's somewhat out of our control at this point, unfortunately. But as information becomes available, certainly I will provide updates.
Thank you. All right, and moving on to 03920, Councilor Berica, update status of Allen Street RFP. And again, we factored the sale of a town property at Allen Street into our general operating budget and are looking forward to an update on that.
Great, thank you. So as the committee knows or may know, we published a request for proposals for the sale of the property at 44 Allen Street back in August. Submissions were due no later than October 8th, 2020. So just a general overview of the way that the process works. Because it was an RFP, interested bidders were required to submit 2 separate proposals, one being the technical proposal, setting out the details of how they intended to meet the needs that the town had provided for in the RFP. And the second was the financial proposal. And that's done because submissions have to be considered first on their merits before the evaluation committee could consider the price proposals submitted with each of the packets received. So we did receive 5 proposals in total for the property, which I think is great. 4 of those proposals were evaluated by the committee. The reason that the 5th was not was because it was considered unresponsive, as it was received after the deadline and did not include the necessary submission materials. So the 4 proposals that were received, all of which are available on the town's website. If anybody has any trouble or accessing those, just let me know and I'm happy to get you over a copy. The one was from Pulte Homes of New England, LLC. They are the developers behind Jonathan's Landing here in town. The next was Arch Communities and Wind Development. They are responsible for several properties. I think the closest one is the Watson in Quincy. Tragerth Companies and Waverly 309 LLC. There was an evaluation committee that included myself, town engineer John Thompson, and director Christine Stickney. And the 3 of us independently evaluated the proposals based on criteria that was set forth in the RFP, excuse me. And that includes a whole variety of factors from how they use the property, how they make the most of the Riverwalk, financial capabilities, and other things of the like. So the RFP is also available on the website if anybody wanted to see it. So the committee each does its own independent evaluation, and then we come together under the direction and organization again of Lorraine C. to compare our rankings. And the committee unanimously ranked the proposals submitted by Arch Communities and Wind Development as the highest rating proposal of the 4 that were evaluated. So once the committee makes that determination as far as who is the highest ranking, we're then informed of the financial proposals that accompanied each of them. And so again, where this is all public information, I can share that the Waverly 309 proposal was $200,000. The Tragerth Company proposal was $1,000. The Pulte Homes proposal was $1.5 million, and the Arch Communities and Wind Development proposal was also $1.5 million. And that's good news because, as you might recall, the appraised value of the property was 1.3, and that's what we estimated as far as a revenue source for the fiscal year. Because Arch Communities was the highest rated and their price proposal was equal to the price proposal of the next highest rated, where we have no ability to negotiate the price. We accept it or we don't. On October 26th, we notified Arch Communities and Wind Development of our intent to award the contract for the purchase of Allen Street to them, and that starts kind of the sale process for us. The next step is execution of a purchase and sale agreement and agreement to the terms of the land development agreement. Those were attached as exhibits to the RFP, and it specifically stated that both documents need to be executed in substantially the same form as that attached to the RFP. And there's 45 days to negotiate the terms of that. So that was provided to the company at the end of October. and waiting, to hear from them some of the items that they want to discuss, which probably will revolve around the schedule. As far as payment milestones go, the proposal included a security deposit of $75,000. A second payment of $75,000 will be paid at the signing of the purchase and sale agreement, and then the balance will be due at the time of the delivery of the deed. So we are working to try and ensure that we receive the full 1.5 before the end of the fiscal year to meet or exceed, the estimated revenue that was done as part of the budget. So I'll share with the committee some of the details of the project itself. Again, though, I would encourage you to take a look at the submission, which is on the website. The proposal calls for a total of 44 units, including studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And there will also be an array of different affordability levels that are going to range from 30 to 60% of the AMI or area median income, as well as middle income units for those who earn up to 120% of the AMI. And there will be a total of 25% of the units dedicated for workforce and middle income families, which is really great for housing here in Braintree. So this is exciting. This is certainly something that we've talked about for a long time. That's been a long time coming. And this is a huge positive step forward for the town as far as utilizing that property. The other note that I'll make is, I want to say it was in September, at the end of September, we were approached by a utility company who was doing some work in the area and needed a place to store some vehicles through the end of the calendar year. So we did execute a license with them and are receiving a rental income at $6,000 a month for October, November, and December. So we are still managing to use that property a little bit while we work out the details of the purchase and sale and transfer of the property over to Arch and Win. So I think that that's all pretty positive news for us this evening.
Thank you so much, Chief of Staff Taub. Councillor Ryan, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I just want to say this is a great news for Braintree. As you said, Nicole, we had a selection committee together that reviewed our request for proposals, and without even knowing how much we were going to get, you picked the best proposal for the town of Braintree. And then you open the second envelope and it's the best monetary value for the town of Braintree as well, the 1.5 million. And we have some affordable housing mixed in. Win, win, win. Great story. And thank you for that update.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Councillor Connors. You're on mute.
In the proposal itself, does it have any initial layouts or what it's going to look like and that type of information? I won't say anything further till I actually go look at the RFP, but it has all that information in it. So the Braintree residents down there. And is the intention still to, I know at one point the town was talking about making Allen Street a one-way street into a residential area. With 44 units going in there, was that part of the proposal all? Is that it's going to be a one-way, or has that gone by the wayside because of the sale, or do we know the status of that?
I apologize. That was not part of the sale, and I don't have an update on that, but I certainly can inquire with John Thompson and see what the status of that is. And yes, the proposal, which is very nice, it looks like this, includes renderings both of the exterior of the building from all sides, as well as kind of some drawings and intended use for that riverfront area over there as well. So if anybody has any trouble locating the submission, just let me know. I'm happy to send it out and make that more readily available.
And did it include open space for the public on the Riverwalk? That's part of when you refer to Riverwalk, you refer to the open space that we've been talking about for years down there. And yes. It also includes, I assume, any water level issues that we're having down there as far as reinforcement and build up and doing the proper construction to ensure that was that all in there?
Certainly, and it all still will have to be permitted,
Right.
and so subject to review. So all of that would be considered during the actual construction and development.
Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
Councilor Shasha.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to echo Councilor Ryan's sentiment that this is, to see a dilapidated old property be redeveloped is great. That it is going to include some amenities for the neighborhood is even better. That it's going to include affordable housing is, like you said, win-win-win. I think this is, we've been talking about this for years. I think it's just great that it's moving ahead like this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other counselor wish to ask a question? Okay, I want to echo all of those sentiments, and I also want to thank you, Nicole and team. I think this is a level of information that we haven't had in the past. I know how helpful it is for me, and I'm sure it will be helpful for the residents. And we can, as counselors, put forward this information and help spread it around so people know what's happening. And again, really appreciate the level of detail you've provided. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. All right. We are going to go back to the beginning of our agenda. I think our last item of business is 20071, Town Clerk, polling locations or take up any action relative thereto. Mr. Casey, would you like to speak on this issue?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. What I'm asking this evening is your support on making the trial voting centers that were used for these past 3 elections into a permanent, on a permanent basis going forward. And the reason why I bring it
Did we lose Clerk Casey, I think? Okay, we'll give him a minute.
He waited so patiently for, oh, he's
there
back.
You are. Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
I know.
My machine probably went to sleep. But basically, I'm asking to do that at this time. One is there could be a possible recall election coming forward. I still haven't received any paperwork on where they stand on that affidavit. But secondly, the vote that the council had taken on the end of July 15th, I believe the date was that the trial basis was going to end on December 31st of this year. So I'm planning for next year. I need to get things done, and I want to be in a good position as we move forward for the next election. By the way, which it will be November 2nd of next year, we have one. But with that, as part of the making this a permanent solution, there are some little details that need to be addressed. And one of those would be because in District 2, and it would be District 2B, that is not contiguous to the voting center. In District 3B, that to contiguous with Braintree High School. In District 3B, which is not contiguous to East Middle School voting center, that there's a home rule petition that needs to be conducted in order to make this all happen. So there is some future legwork that needs to be done if it does occur. Why am I asking for this? Back in July of 15, when I proposed this on a temporary basis for the COVID pandemic events and some of the challenges that was before us, it only made sense to consolidate voting locations and manage that COVID social distancing to a level that it would meet the safety of both voters and election workers. And I am happy to report as of today, there have not been a single COVID-related tracing event associated to any of the 3 elections. That includes the early voting in person that was conducted in September and November. So I'm very proud of all of the election workers, my staff, and all those who were involved to ensure that the voters and the election workers were very safe during this time frame. Over those 3 elections, basically we had over 40,000 people come in front of us. And that's a challenge within itself, and to keep them safe, it brings a lot of pride to me on having that happen. But another thing that is important to me is, did you get the charts I sent you today? Okay, looking on that 10-year trend chart of voter choices, you'll notice back in 2012, it's the state general election. It was a presidential election in 2012. We had approximately 20,000 voters walk into one of the 12 voting precincts that we had back then. This past November, we had a little over 7,500 voters actually cast a ballot on election day. And you can see the chart even across all the various types of elections that in-person voting on election day has been trending downwards, and in my opinion will continue to trend downward as the voters have the, oh, we lost everybody again. There I'm back again.
You're good, Jim.
Okay, so what we're seeing is that there's going to be a continued trend of voters not showing up on election day. They will be taking one of the other 4 options to cast their ballots. As you can see in the line on the chart that says SGE, that's State General Election 2016. That was the first time that any type of early voting was offered to the voters. That was early voting in person. We had just under 7,000 voters who took advantage of that. So in a 4-year period, we saw voters go from 20,000 to 14,000. In 2020, another voter choice was given, and that was the voting by mail, in addition to the early voting in person. So we went from 20,000 to 14,000 to 7,500 voters. And you can see that tends to be in line with the other elections that we tend to hold, that people, we see a decline in the actual election date because they have the option, these choices. Now going forward, will early voting be offered in future elections? I just want to remind everybody to a date, maybe many of you weren't even born on that date. It was April 1st, 1966, and it's not an April Fool's joke. This is when that the state legislature passed a temporary sales tax of 3%. Today, that has more than doubled, and it continues some 54 years later. Once legislators pass these actions, they tend to continue forward and will not change. Early voting in person, it's a convenience, and it was clearly defined back in 2016. The early voting by mail, by ballot, again, was another convenience for voters, and it gave them additional options. The voters really fully took advantage of that, and which I think they will continue to do in the futures. So when we look at in-person voting, if we take a look at the trends for this past November election, we had 33 voters per hour in each of the precincts, which is very manageable if we combine them into 3 voting centers that we could essentially put in 125 voters an hour into the building. And that's something that we used to do back in individual precincts just for one precinct. So we could manage more effectively by having staff members together to share their knowledge. This past election, I lost 7 of my election workers, my wardens who managed the individual precincts, without having this consolidation and having the experience of 1 or 2 additional wardens within the precinct to tutor our new wardens. We could never achieve the success we had these past 3 elections. And this going forward, as we see a changeover in our staffing on elections, As I stated before in past meetings, our election workers are quite old. They have now decided they're going to start moving forward, and we're moving into a more positive line. We're getting a little younger, maybe from 76, we're probably down to 74 now. But I received a lot of new workers here who were very young. They're very technical oriented. Some of them were very helpful during the election process as we went through these 3 elections. This past election, if you all voted, and I'm sure you all did, you saw that instead of using the paper check-in books, we used electronic poll books. What did they do for us? That increased the check-in time considerably. Instead of looking you up in a book on a picture page and trying to find out where you are to check you off, we could essentially identify you with a few clicks. With the addition of the early voting portion of now the election process, we have to ensure that you, the voter, if you cast a ballot or requested a ballot by mail or voted in person, on election day, we have to know that you are, in fact, did you vote? Did you request for a ballot? And with the electronics that we have in place right now, that we are able to do that instantaneously. We essentially, I put in 3 transmitters into each of the 2 middle schools and the high school, which communicate, and that they're secured transmitters, which I had Beld and me, Andrew Marin, who assisted with the company to help set these things up, that we could keep track of every voter as they came into the precinct. And
Jim, sorry to cut you off. Do you want to just, maybe you can touch on, I think you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullet points.
Okay. So
if we have questions on the technical aspects,
okay.
I think we could ask those during the Q&A, if you don't mind.
That's fine. Okay, some of the key points is that with District Voting Center, I have additional support staff. And then again, they provide a knowledgeable base of election workers who can assist the less experienced workers. The delivery of absentee and early voted ballots. There's more efficiency in delivering these ballots to just 3 voting centers than distributing out to 12 different centers there. And I'm not sure if you're aware that on election day, especially this past one, as we got ballots in on November 3rd, we had to move those ballots, check them in at the clerk's office, and then move them out to the precincts. Moving them out to 3 precincts versus 12 precincts was more efficient and a more timely matter that we could gas their ballots in a more efficient way. Again, I talked about the poll books. They were a key asset in the success of our elections. Election day oversight, it provides an opportunity for staffing each voting center with a precinct coordinator. And what I did this past November election, I had 3 coordinators, one at Braintree High School, one at East, and one at South Middle School, that essentially had the authority or that were empowered to act on my behalf when I didn't get to one of the voting centers. Now imagine me going to 12 different precincts, which I have done in the past, but I spend very little time at each of the precincts because of the commuting time and the activities that are going on. So when I get to a precinct, I can view 4 precincts at one time and address issues there, which they always come up on elections. The election day coordination of moving ballots at 5:30 in the morning from town hall to the different precincts. Instead of going to 12 precincts, we go into 3 voting centers, and it's more efficient that all of these are protected. There is a cost savings. There was a reduction. The biggest cost saving was a reduction of police details. That each election there was a savings of $9,000. Now, something that came up on the last election, there was a directive that we had to have 2 additional police officers because of safety concerns throughout the state, and they assigned 2 additional officers to the 3 voting centers. If I was in the 12 voting centers, I would have to have 24 additional officers out there. Again, that is a more efficient way of managing your assets and your personnel. And again, one of the big things, and it was a call that has been going on for years and years, is moving out of the elementary schools. This does achieve that. Now, some of the concerns that voters had when it was initially approved were, will we be able to maintain the social distancing? Were we able to provide sufficient parking? Was the check-in process going to be slowed down because of the expected larger volumes? None of that happened. The things that were put in place to address those issues were there. And let me tell you, for the first time in the 7 years I've been doing elections, we had someone deliver us a edible arrangement thanking us for the services that we provide and how smooth it was. I received a number of cards, emails, and other support, people commenting favorably on what has happened. I never saw that before in 7 years. So this is something that people have seen what was done, what can be done, and they were quite pleased with it. I realize that there are some people who will object to it. No matter what you do, there are some people who will always object to things. But in the overall view of it, this process, as in voting says, is more efficient with the changes in the way elections are going to be handled in the future. We're going to be ahead of the curve as we see a reduction of election day voters and as we transition into the more electronic types of voting or by mail and other avenues that a voter can choose to vote, we will be able to accommodate that, ensure that we, and at the same time, ensure that we keep the integrity of the election process. So I would be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Clerk Casey. Are there questions from the council, the councilors, the committee? Councilor Flaherty.
Okay, well, first of all, I really do want to congratulate the Jim Casey and all of your staff and all of the election workers for the amazing job that you did in this past election and the two that came before it. I heard fabulous reports from residents who were very, very satisfied with how clear the instructions were and how swiftly they were able to move through the process. And even though it was a big change, they felt like it went very, very smoothly. I dropped in on each of the occasions of on each of the 3 different elections just to sort of see how it was going myself, and everything looked good. So it was a big undertaking. It was a big change. I know that you evaluated a lot of minutia, and I think you really did an amazing, amazing job. So I can see that you have risen to this challenge. I can see that there's a lot of data to support moving forward with it, and I can see that there's, I think, even a lot of community support at this point to do that. But my concern is really to do with a small minority of people. These are voters who do not drive, and how they will be able to access the polls going forward. Because especially if you are a person who has a handicap, you need to understand that none of the election day polling locations are accessible by public transportation. And so the question that arose, and I attended a Commission on Disabilities meeting where this was the chief item on the agenda. The question that arose was, how can we get people who don't drive, either because they just don't have a car or because they have a handicap that prevents them from driving, how can we make sure that they're able to get to the polls? And a lot of ideas were traded at that meeting. One is that the senior center has handicapped accessible vehicles, and they do run a really robust transportation program, but their rule is that you have to be 60 to avail yourself of that program. So anybody who's under 60 rather has to find an alternative solution. And then another idea that came up was whether, the Marge Crispin Center also has handicapped accessible vehicles, but Ann Toland says the center would have to pay increased insurance premiums to cover additional riders. And so that was the barrier to that. And then, you know, other people commented, well, what about the ride? You could use the ride to get there. And Crystal Evans let me know that the ride is only meant to increase access to existing transportation routes, which don't serve any of our polling locations. So the ride is not, that is not what the ride is intended to do. So the solution that kept coming up was, well, what you do in this situation is you call the candidates themselves and they run operations to try and help people get to the polls. And that's how this can be achieved. So to that end, I called several of the campaigns and I got mixed answers. The Vote Yes campaign, when we were doing the debt exclusion, they didn't have accessible vehicles, but they were willing to give people a ride if they didn't need a handicapped accessible vehicle. And then in the most recent campaign, the most recent election, I called the Biden campaign and they commented that they were not committing resources to that kind of thing. And then I called the Trump campaign, the Cusack campaign, and the Collins campaign, and none of those campaigns ever got back to me. So this is not a way that handicapped or people who don't have cars can rely on to get to the polls if they need to. So one idea that was discussed at the meeting was whether money from handicap parking violations could be used to pay the insurance premiums that appear to be the barrier to using the Marge Crispin Center vehicles. And Director McGrath indicated that she would investigate that possibility and get back to us. And this was in enough time that we would be able to use that information and you know, publicize it if it was possible. We could execute it. It was enough time if we moved swiftly. But she didn't get back. And even though I emailed her twice subsequently looking for a follow-up on it, I just didn't get that information. And then eventually it was too late. So that did not happen. So it's important to understand that I think we're only talking about a very small minority of people. The reason that we've gotten all this huge positive feedback is because most people don't have trouble getting to the polling location, and also because there's these alternatives for you know, casting your ballot. And I recognize that there's early voting and mail-in ballots, and all of these things are going to continue to be possibilities for people to take advantage of if they wish. But you have to understand that there are also some people, and again, it's a tiny minority, but I don't want to ignore them. There are some people who can't avail themselves of those options because they require assistive technology to compensate for motor issues or vision impairments. They can't vote by mail because they can't manage the ballot, or they can't see the ballot. And so those people use assistive technology that's available at the polling locations. But I think that in addition to that, we should not ignore right now that there is some national mistrust of any kind of balloting other than in-person election day voting. There are people who feel like that is the only way that they are 100% sure that their ballot is going to be counted, and they really don't want to do any other way. And I think that every resident in Braintree deserves to have that opportunity. I think this is a solvable problem, and I'd like to see Braintree make some effort to solve it. And so that's why I'm asking this question today. Or do we have any ideas, any potential solutions that we can work on to try and make sure that this very small segment of Braintree's population is able to make it to the polls? Because I know that they want to come.
Okay, whether we're at 3 voting centers or 12 polling locations, those issues exist. Not all polling locations have public transportation. Two of the voting centers today are existing polling locations. That would be East Middle School, because we're going to be moving back to there if we go to the 12 voting centers, because that was only a temporary move to the Council of Elder Affairs. And then South Middle School has always been a polling location. We do not have, to my knowledge, I don't believe there were public transportation to the Pond Street facility, the Marge Crispin Center, when it was located on Pond Street. The Flaherty School didn't have public transportation to it. There was some public transportation to the Hollis and to, I would say, limited to St. Thomas More, but there was public transportation to District 3B, which is the Braintree Yacht Club. And then we go to East Middle School. Actually, that transportation there has just started. For the first time in my years here in Braintree, that I see a bus going up Commercial Street towards Union Street. It's something that I thought it should have been there back 45 years ago when I moved into town. It made the right choice. And I go into the Liberty School. There is no bus transportation into the Liberty School. There's no bus transportation, again, to South or the Highlands. So this is an existing problem, no matter which precincts that we go into, unless we have a building that could be located on a specific bus route, in which there aren't any buildings of that size that we would have the ability to utilize on a guaranteed basis for every single election. There has been some changes which came very late in the election process. I believe it was late October. I recall it was right after that meeting, the Zoom meeting we had with the Handicap Commission, that the Secretary of State's office was finally mandated to provide online voting for those with disabilities. They just needed to apply with the Secretary of State's office with some documentation, and then they could be granted to receive an online ballot. Now, during the early voting in on election day, there were a number of those with handicap and those who were visually impaired did show up at the polling locations, where we do provide assistance for them only when asked, because that is how it is mandated by law. We do have an equipment there for those with visually impaired, that they insert the ballot in. It had headphones so they can listen to the ballot, and also they have the handicap dots to maneuver the screen to cast their ballot. Several people have come in during these election processes to achieve all of that. The tools are there. They can still come in for ballot, but they do have the other options now, either, like I say, coming in early to do it when it be less crowded, or they can do a ballot request by mail. And then again, now with the new one, the online digital ballot, which again, they have to themselves sign up for. It's something that it's not automatically given to any voter. There are conditions associated with that. I think the voting centers they provide the smoothest way in for those who have handicaps to get into the larger buildings. They're more handicapped accessible. Let me tell you, we barely made the handicapped accessible on most of our precincts. And that we were 10 years in the making to even just to meet the standard.
Point of order.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Ryan.
I think we're getting a little, I understand how important this is, but we're not going to settle this issue tonight about handicap accessibility. I'm glad we brought it up, but I don't think we all need to talk about this for the next hour about handicapped accessibility. We need to, whatever the voting locations we're going to have, we should make sure that they're handicapped accessible and they can get rides there. We don't need to go through all the issues on this tonight. So I think we need to get back on focus here.
Yep, I would say let's in the interest of, time and making sure that all the counselors can speak. I'm going to move on to Councilor Connors, and then we'll continue. And if we have to come back to it, we can. Thank you, Clerk Casey.
Okay.
Councilor Connors.
Hi. So I just want to talk about a little bit of insider information. I don't know if people are aware, but I did volunteer to be a poll worker for all 3 elections. I was there from 6 a.m. till the end for every one of them. And I can say it went incredibly smooth. The clerk's department in just phenomenal job in making this happen. The first go round, we had a list of how we could improve, and those lists of improvements were given to Mr. Casey. They immediately took action, corrected those. In the second election, it went even better. There was never a line, anybody handicap accessible. Again, no issues with that. I can honestly say I was against going down to 3 schools or 3 locations for this polling. And I can definitively say after living it and knowing what the clerk's office goes through and knowing now how it works and how all the little bugs that they had to work out on November 3rd and the panic mode that we were in for a little bit when computers, it was incredible to see the department come together and the department do what they did. And I will fully 100% support this because it is so doable. And it was a really great job. I just want to say, I actually had to do a visually impaired vote, Jim, just so you're aware. That was a little bit of a learning curve for me, but the machine worked wonderful. The gentleman was very happy that he got to vote. He got to see his vote in action and see the screen and actually put down what he wanted to put down. And so it was incredibly smooth. I think everybody was very happy with the train station colors, although I still have a complaint that I didn't get my yellow brick road because I really wanted to sing Follow the Yellow Brick Road to everybody as they went through, but the stations worked out well. The red line, the green line, the second and third time these people came in to vote, they knew what line to follow. They didn't even need to stop and talk to you. There was a couple of times at the beginning of November 3rd, where we had a line that was, at the beginning. We smoothed them right through. We had them through the main door and in their voting stations within 2 to 3 minutes. So it really is for someone, again, that was hesitant to do down to 3 and was looking for the 6. Very happy with the 3 schools, 3 locations, and I feel it should be fully supported. So thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you for
Councilor Connors.
Your comments.
Councilor Shasha.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yeah, I've heard almost entirely positive comments about the election. I think it's been very well received with 3 locations. I do still think, to echo Councilor Flaherty's point, there are some residents that will struggle with this. And I do think it's something that we can solve, especially if there's supposed to be cost savings out of this. It seems like there's a way that we can solve this problem for our handicapped and some of our elderly residents that have trouble getting around. And we can do that as part of the discussion at the council. The only other thing I would say is that I think on this topic, we as a council should go above and beyond our ordinary notification procedures, because given the way that our meetings are right now, a lot of people not everybody does Zoom very well. A lot of people that are not on social media are just not getting access to the same information that they used to. And I think even if we have to take out an ad in the paper or something, we need to make sure that all of those residents that are going to be affected by this know that we're having this conversation and can participate somehow. And we can, figure that out as we bring this to the council, but I think that will be critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shasha. I see your hand raised, Councilor Connors, but let me just see if Councilor Ryan has something for the first time.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So just want to congratulate the town clerk and his staff for a great job for these elections we just had. You hear about all of the problems all over the country with counting votes, and you're not hearing about that in Braintree. So great job, Clerk Casey, for the elections. I think it's very positive too, the changes that were made. I did have several people come to me, Jim. I have one question, and they asked, why did St. Thomas More get moved all the way over to the high school? Why didn't it get moved to the East Middle School, which is right down the street? It seems like it's just geographically they couldn't understand that.
Okay, let me explain the election process real quick. Okay, we have 6 districts. In each district, there are 2 polling places. District 1 and 2 are aligned with a state senator, Senator Timilty, and Governor's Council, Robert Juvenile, as their representatives. For District 3 to 6, we have Senator Keenan, and we have General Governor Council Iannella in that position. So there are two different styles to accomplish that. I keep District 1 and 2 together to ensure that ballot styles are not mixed up. I want to ensure that people get the correct ballot for the people they should be voting for. So that is the primary reasons why they are combined. Under the current structure, when I had to move out the Marge Crispin Center, that's District 1A, to Braintree Town Hall, I put myself in jeopardy because that's a District 1A being combined with a District 5A. So I have a lot of concerns and a lot of headaches during each election, ensuring to hopefully that ballots do not get accidentally mixed up. No matter how much I tell election workers, do not swap ballots amongst each other. These are the check-in clerk. I do have some who go up the reservation and do that. And it upsets me to no end. And I try to speak with them that this one particular election may not cause a problem, but there is an election coming down the pike that will become a real problem. So what I try to do is get them into the same mode of operation. You follow the same rules and regulations.
Thank you for that answer. I'm all set.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. Councilor Connors.
So I did forget to mention one thing. The only complaint that I heard during the entire process of all 3 elections, and it was less than a handful of people, was that they were not notified of the polling location change, to which I'm going to say I know the clerk's office did their due diligence in notifications, but maybe that is something that needs to be, everybody's used to it now that has been going, but something that could be improved. But that really was the only complaint. Other than that, it was all positive. But I did want to bring that up.
Madam Chairman, may I speak to that?
Please.
Okay. We had the notification of the changes on the website. The mayor did a reverse 911 call that may not get out to everybody. At a request that we did a mailing out to all of the households that have a registered voter at a cost of a little over $6,000. And additionally, at each of the old polling locations, I put up signage in front of those things, telling the voters that their voting location had changed and informed them where they should be going. That was put up before the September 1st election, and it remained there until the November 3rd election. I did get 1 or 2 calls of people saying that they did not see the sign, and I asked them to explain where they lived. And one of the persons lived, who would be going to District, the Morrison School 4B. And I informed them that did he get a telephone call? And they informed me, my telephone number is not with the 911 system. I said, okay, did you get a postcard? No, I didn't get a postcard. And then I asked him,
I know you, I think.
But these are the things that you're always going to hear this. Okay?
Yep.
There's always going to be that small nugget of people who may not see the communications, but I spent a lot of time in communicating that out there. And I know a lot of you councilors did the same thing.
Yep.
And they're very successful.
Thank you. Councilor Shasha, did you have your hand raised? Okay, sorry, I must have not lowered it. Any other comments or questions from the councilors? Okay, I'd like to also offer my thanks to Clerk Casey, to you, your staff. You did a phenomenal job under extremely trying circumstances. And I appreciate everything that you and your team have done. I have one question and a comment. Do we know for sure if the state of or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is going to continue with mail-in voting?
Well, I kind of led into a little segue about the April 1st, 1960.
Right.
But that'll be, in my opinion, it'll be permanent.
Okay, but it's not today, right?
As of, it has not changed that it's going to be changing. As long as the COVID pandemic is in existence, they may continue that for the election for 2021, though the state doesn't have an election. So that'll be a local option of what you want to do there. But how we continue on a special election, if one comes to being, the state may have granted, but I tend to think the legislators have shown in the past, once something gets in, it stays in. An example of that was the in-person early vote in 2016.
Thank you. So again, I echo all of the counselors' statements of the phenomenal job you did. That said, I did reach out proactively to my constituents, and I heard loud and clear from folks, and I tend to agree that, you know, my obligation is to make sure that voting is as easy and accessible as possible. So I am in favor of returning to the 12 precincts. I know it is a lot of work, and I also know that this town's up to the task, and making sure that we bend over backwards to make voting as accessible and easy for everybody in town is important. Hopefully we will be in a better state next November than we are this year. But again, thank you, Clerk Casey, and to your staff.
Well, thank you.
Okay, with that, any other counselors? Okay, Counselor Ryan is there. Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Flaherty.
Thank you. I want to say that I recognize that this has worked very well, and that it is a very good system for Braintree to use. But and Clerk Casey went to a lot of trouble to demonstrate that the 12 polling locations were not accessible by public transportation. But in those cases, people were able to walk, or if they were in a wheelchair, to just roll to those places. And I also recognize that those locations often were not very handicapped accessible. I know the Marge Crispin Center, for example, had many, many challenges in that regard. So I want to know if this town is going to make an effort to try to solve that problem, because I made a strong effort to help people move in that direction, and I met with a lot of resistance.
The Marge Crispin Center will never return as a polling location because it's being utilized for other town departments now, and that the space would not be available to do that. So my alternative option was to put myself in jeopardy by moving that to Braintree Town Hall on election days and combining two separate ballot styles within a precinct. It's something that I have to live with. We're going to live with it, but it's not the ideal situation. There aren't any other buildings adequate in that area other than the high school, which the gym is kind of oversized for one precinct. Fits for 4, but not for 1. So I don't have an alternative precinct to move them into. What I can do is look at a precinct that, again, is maybe not adjacent, that is adjacent to 1A, but would have an adequate area that we can move into it. But like yourself, I wasn't happy with the way the Marge Crispin Center on Pond Street was set up. We did meet the bare minimum on all of the requirements, and I had to live with that as we move forward. I was always looking for improvements within the election and finding, in my opinion, the best way to meet the needs of the voters and provide them with accessible locations. And my conclusion came down to either one voting center or these three mini centers, which seem to do the
Point of order. Is this about the handicap issue that was just brought up? Because I feel like we just keep going over the same territory here.
It was finding a location for Pond Street. 1B.
Okay. Saying that we're not going back there is good enough for me.
Okay, we're not going back to 1A, to Marge Christmas Center on Pond Street, or the old Marge.
So I have, Madam Chairwoman, so I'm looking at the proposed motion, and I don't know if everybody has this in front of them. And it says for District 1A, 1B, 2A, and it's saying the Hollis is 2A be sent to the high school. And then it's saying District 3A, Ross, 4A, 4B be sent to the East Middle. 5A, 5B, 6A, 6B be sent to South Middle. But then down below it says that District 2B, Hollis School, that's not the Hollis School 2B. 2B is St. Thomas More. So yeah, how much of this is not accurate?
That is 100% accurate. 2B right now on council order number, let's see, 20017, I believe it is, moved. 20017 moved St. Thomas More to the Hollis School. And as I stated in my report, there was, the default would be going back to the old setup, which would have District 2B at the Hollis School. However, I acknowledge within the text of the document.
So point of order. So when we never were going back to St. Thomas More if things were left alone?
No. If you read the document, it says here, Council Order 20017 approved change to Hollis School for District 2B, St. Thomas More polling location in anticipation of the local special election that was scheduled for Saturday, March 28, 2020. A review of this change was agreed with Councilor Sasha after the special election was held, and it's under attachment number 3.
So we were changing 2B to Hollis permanently, or not just for that one election?
It was for that period of time, but we would have to vote it back to another school or leave it at Hollis, to St. Thomas More at Hollis. If you want, I know you don't want to talk about handicapped accessibility, but the St. Thomas More.
That's not true. I just don't think we're going to settle it right now.
Yeah, I know.
That's not true.
Again, that is not truly, it's again a challenge.
Right. It was confusing to me that you're calling Hollis 2A and 2B. Okay.
Because that's what it is right now.
Okay, I thought it was voted on for one election season. Okay. Sorry about that. Do you want a motion, Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, please, Councilor Ryan.
Okay, so the motion is with the availability and suitability of the East and South Middle Schools and Braintree High School and pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 54, Section 24, that the public convenience would be better served by relocating voting precincts as follows. District 1A, Town Hall. District 1B, Flaherty School. District 2A, Hollis School be relocated to the Braintree High School at 128 Town Street. District 3A, Ross School. District 4A, Elderly Affairs Building. District 4B, Morrison School be relocated to the East Middle School at 305 River Street. District 5A, Town Hall. District 5B, Liberty School. District 6A, South Middle School. District 6B, Highland School be relocated to the South Middle School. And it is further ordered that the existing polling place, District 2B, Hollis, currently located in a voting precinct not adjacent to Braintree High School at 128 Town Street, and the existing polling place 3B, Braintree Yacht Club, currently located in a voting precinct not adjacent to East Middle School at 305 River Street, that the public convenience would be better served by relocating District 2B, Hollis School to Braintree High School at 128 Town Street, and District 3B, Braintree Yacht Club to the East Middle School at 305 River Street, and that a home rule petition be filed in the form set forth in the accompanying order. So moved.
Is there a second? Donna, you're on mute.
It's been second.
Thank you. Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Council Baraka,
No.
Council Ryan,
Aye.
Council Connors,
Aye.
Council Flaherty, Council Flaherty,
No.
Council Sasha.
Present.
Okay, I lost my audio. I thought we were voting on the, I'm sorry. I lost my audio for a while and I thought we were voting on the polling locations.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're voting on the polling locations. And you voted
And I voted no, and that's right.
Okay, thank you. So we have 2 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 present.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Council
Clerk-
Baraka,
Yes.
Council Ryan,
Aye.
Council Connors,
Aye.
Council Flaherty,
Yes.
Council Sasha.
Yes.
All in
Good
favor.
night, good night,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Good night.
Bye.
Aye.